We're going to look quickly at how to correct horizontal and vertical skew in our images, and we can take a couple of different approaches here. So for this first image, I took this photo with an ultra-wide angle lens fairly close to the ground, and as expected, we've got quite a pronounced leaning back effect to the perspective here. Now, our lens correction options are available through the Develop persona. Traditionally, we associate this persona with developing RAW files, which is correct, but we can also enter this persona from any valid pixel layer. So say I've already developed my image, which I have in this case, and I'm in the photo persona, I can jump over to the Develop persona and find the options I need in the lens panel here. Okay, so we want to concern ourselves mainly with horizontal and vertical distortion. So we can drag vertical all the way to -100%, and that more or less corrects the perspective issue with this image. We also can experiment with the horizontal distortion. And of course, we also have rotation, which just saves us rotating the image using the cropping tool. So you can just be a bit more efficient and tackle rotation at the same time. Now, I'm doing this by eye, and it looks pretty good, I think, but we can also expose a grid. If we go to View and Show Grid here, we get a nice representation of the horizontals and verticals in our image. Now, if we find the grid is too strong or too faint, we can go to View, Grid and Axis Manager, and we can tweak the opacity of both the subdivision lines and the main grid lines. Now, to my eye, it did look fairly good, but the grid would perhaps suggest otherwise. Let's just see if we can match this up with the grid a bit more accurately by tweaking the rotation. But see, the problem with the grid is that the top of the building is not going to be equal to the bottom, regardless of how much tweaking we do, unless we do something like a mesh distortion. So if we're making these areas level, then the areas down here are no longer level. And to be honest, they strike me as more incorrect. So what I'm going to do is go by eye and just take the rotation back until I feel happy with it. Perhaps leave it at about -0.2 degrees. And I'm also going to turn the grid off just to kind of eyeball the final result before I commit it. I'm still not even happy with that. I might just tweak the rotation again, and perhaps even put in an exact value and hit return. Okay, I'm going to go with that then. So once we're done here, we can click Develop. Okay, and as a result of the correction, we've got these transparent areas which we will crop out, but not entirely. So I'll select the crop tool and I'll just drag these nodes in. But I'm not going to get rid of all the transparent detail here, and we've got a tiny bit at the top as well. So I'll click Apply, and what I'm going to do is just quickly in-paint these areas in to intelligently fill them in with surrounding content. Now, before we do this, we need to discard the information that's hiding outside of our current crop, because photo crops non-destructively, whereas in this case, we want to actually get rid of that information hiding behind the canvas crop. So to do this, it's really easy. We just either right-click the layer and choose Rasterize, or we can do the same thing from Layer, Rasterize. Okay, so that has now discarded that additional information outside of the crop. Then we want to go to Select, Alpha Range, select Partially Transparent. Okay, so we now get a marquee selection of these areas. And I'm just going to go to Select and Grow. And we're going to grow the selection by a small amount. I'm just going to type in 4 pixels here and click Apply. This just overlaps it into the areas of the image here and gives us a nice seamless blend when we do the in-painting. So finally, we can just go to Edit and In-Paint. Okay, and then just to get rid of the marquee selection, we can go to Select and Deselect. And there we go, we've filled in the transparent areas in the resulting cropped image. Okay, so that's one approach. The other is non-destructive and perhaps gives us a little more flexibility. So what we're going to do here is use a live perspective filter. So we can go to Layer, New Live Filter layer, and work our way down and find the Perspective filter. Okay, so by default it gives us a grid overlay, which I'm actually going to disable. So I'll uncheck Show Grid, and then I'm just going to zoom out a bit. And what I'm basically aiming to do is just tweak mainly the vertical perspective in this image by experimenting with these 4 corner nodes. So there's a bit of trial and error involved. Okay, I'll just drag that down a bit further. And again, the grid can be really helpful here. So we can go to View and Show Grid, and we can make sure that the left-hand side of the building runs in line with the right-hand side. I think that looks about right, so I'm just going to turn the grid off again. So in essence, what we've done is we've used Live Perspective almost to create our own custom horizontal and vertical perspective correction. Again, what I'll do is just close that dialog down, select the crop tool, and just bring these areas in like so. But again, I'm going to leave the top. I'm not going to crop that. And I'm going to show you another useful non-destructive approach to inpainting. So I'm going to create a new pixel layer here. And I'm going to long click on the healing brush tool to expose the inpainting brush tool. Okay, let's choose a suitable width. So perhaps a bit bigger than that, about 300 pixels. Okay, and then on this option, I'm going to set it to current layer and below. So what this will now do, as I click drag across to inpaint, is it will sample from this pixel layer with the live perspective applied, but it will put the results on a new pixel layer, which means it's completely non-destructive. So we can just hide that or delete it or do anything else to it at a later date. And again, the same goes for the perspective filter. At any point we can double click that and go back in and change our perspective transform. So there we go, 2 ways of correcting skewed perspective in Affinity Photo. Hope you found that useful. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the other video tutorials.